Hey, everybody. Adam Phillips here for Dynamite Entertainment. I'm here today with our wonderful writer, Dan Abnett. We're going to talk about his upcoming project, Vampirella versus Red Sonja, in a moment. But before we begin, if you're watching at home, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any content coming your way on the Dynamite YouTube page. If you're watching on your phone, of course, too. Anyway, Dan, great to see you.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, how are you?
Not bad at all. Busy as usual.
Yes, good. So this seems like a dream project in a lot of ways. I think for a lot of fans, it seems like the kind of thing where eventually they're going to fight. When's it going to happen? So we're finally getting there. Can you tell me a little about it, how it came about, and where this comes from?
Absolutely. Vampirella versus Red Sonja is as you say, a very exciting prospect. I think last year, time has telescoped, so I'm not sure. But anyway, comparatively recently, we produced two miniseries that ran side by side. One was called Vampirella, the Dark Powers, and one was called Red Sonja, the Superpowers. And they sort of set up this confrontation. They ran concurrently. And in both of them, the sort of, as it were, gimmick that we thought we'd play with, because it was really interesting and a bit unexpected, was to incorporate both of these characters, who are not superheroes, let's face it,
Yeah.
into a superhero context. So I used the superpowers concept that the Dynamite has, which is essentially a wonderful assembly of the great classic old superheroes from the golden age, and sort of reinvented that in a little way, sort of spruced it up and presented it as this institution called the Project, which was a team, a very big team that had a kind of interdimensional remit. Each one of them came from a different version of Earth.
Mhm.
So each Earth that was encountered by the Project supplied its brightest and best to be its representative member as part of the project. And they, using sort of transdimensional gates, they policed and protected all these variant versions of Earth. So you had some Earths that were still, as it were, in the 1940s or the sort of Washington's era or whatever. They each had their own timeline, and therefore the hero that they produced reflected that, and they reflected the technology and sensibility of that world. And in this context, Vampirella's world was a sort of 1969, 1970 Earth, which they had recently contacted.
Mhm.
And Red Sonja's world was obviously a sort of Hyborian age Earth that
Sure.
was also recently contacted. So in the course of these series, we see the Project scouting these worlds out, sort of making first contact and
Mhm.
trying to work out who is the greatest superpowered representative from that planet that they can sort of elect into membership to become part of their team.
Mhm.
And on Vampirella's Earth, there are no superheroes at all, and she's the
Right.
closest that comes to a meta being. So very reluctantly they recruit her because they don't know what to make of her. They have not encountered anything that's sort of supernatural before, or sort
Ah.
of has that sort of demonic air about it. So they're very, very worried about it. They are very much science and technology based, but they have to sort of recruit someone, and she's the kind of the only one there. So her series was about her very, very poorly integrating with the superhero team and trying to operate in this sort of clean cut way of sort of, truth, justice, and everything, and just really not being up for it, but being very effective in her own way, but in ways that often appalled these square-jawed, clean-cut heroes that she was working with, because she
Ah.
had this air of darkness, this dark power about her. And Sonia's story was parallel and great fun, but she was obviously from a sort of much more sort of barbaric Earth.
Right.
It was the sort of planet they thought they'd probably put a cordon on for a few thousand years until it had developed technologically, until they could find somebody.
Uh-huh.
But they go there because the project are detecting a sort of metahuman trace,
Mhm.
which is not Sonia, because Sonia has no superpowers whatsoever. She's an
Right.
amazing person, but she's got no superpowers at all. What they encounter is essentially an evil sorcerer who essentially is exhibiting superhuman power, or the equivalent thereof. He is charged with genuine magic, which they have no defense against. And it so happens that Sonia, who they encounter, again, a very poor first encounter with Sonia on their way to find this guy, she is sort of sworn to kill this guy, and they're getting in her way. So when these team members are captured by the sorcerer and terrible things are afoot, it's her who turns up, this barbarian with a sword, and basically takes this guy down. And they are so impressed, they went, well, okay, she's technically got no superpowers, but clearly she's got something. So we'll recruit her. And bear in mind, this is a sort of high-tech science fiction superhero story, as I said. So Sonja and Vampirella both very much sort of out of context, fish out of water. In fact, Sonja doesn't even speak the language. They have to use translators for her. So when she talks to them, she's got this very thick sort of European Slavic accent, because they, you know, so they are both integrated in the series. We see them both being integrated and become part of this team, and both of them are take it in different ways. Sonja's actually completely baffled by the world that she's brought into, because she's never seen anything like it, but actually takes to it much better, because she's a sort of inquisitive and sort of trusting soul, and she sort of delights in the technologies that she's able to use and the things that she's meant to do. She understands it in very simple, clear terms, and turns out to be something of a useful thing. And also the fact that she's inert and has no magic, but has experience of dealing with magic, means that they think, well, she's a useful person to have around. And then there is Vampirella, who is obviously the opposite of that. She's not a team player. She's the maverick. She keeps sort of balking against what they're trying to get her to do. In the climax of these two series, which I obviously, please go out and read. They are still available, and but at the end of the climax of this is where those two books sort of draw together, and something terrible happens to one of the other Earths that is defended by the project. Something terrible. They don't know what it is, but it smacks of magic, which like I said, they have no defense against. It's absolutely outside the bounds of their technological abilities. And for various reasons, too complicated to go into here, but they suspect that Vampirella is part of that she's almost a sleeper agent who they've accidentally got inside of what they're doing, inside their operation, and has used her influence to sort of corrupt this world, which has now been lost with terrible loss of life. So they go to catch her. They go to hunt her down. She's rogue, and they're going to hunt her down. So the climax of those two series originally was the project going after Vampirella and taking Sonja with them, because she was a much more sort of viable member of the team, and she has the abilities to deal with that. And the last issue is actually the first tremendous clash between these two characters in a superhero context, which, again, for reasons too complicated to go into, Red Sonja wins. She takes Vampirella down, and she catches her on behalf of the project, and the project cart her away for essentially as a criminal, as a war criminal, to try and work out what the hell it is, literally, that she has done that has caused this disaster to affect the community that they're part of. So this series is both the sequel and the consequence of those things. You don't need to know all that, although like I said, I really urge you to catch up if you can, because they're great stories and they give you loads of context, and there's loads of really fun things that happen in there. But this series, Vampirella versus Red Sonja, is about the two of them. One of them part of this enormous organization, one of them a prisoner of this organization, as it tries to deal with this catastrophe that has happened to one of their planets, a catastrophe that appears to be spreading. It's starting to affect more than one world. So it doesn't take a genius or indeed a comic writer to work out that the two things that will happen is that Red Sonja will be their secret weapon in fighting this magical threat. But Sonja's secret weapon, because she is, like I said, an inquisitive, trusting soul, is to figure out that Vampirella can probably teach her things that are going to be really useful, even though none of the other heroes will trust her for a second and consider her responsible. That they need to deal with her, almost use her like a Hannibal Lecter, to find out what it is she's done and sort of bring her on side and exploit her as a resource, which they can use to literally save the world, or worlds plural, which is what's going to happen. And Vampirella, of course, we know she may be less than pure of intention most of the time, but she is not the villain of the piece, and no one believes her. Absolutely no one believes her. She's trying to get them to listen to her, but no one believes her. So what we've got is this huge, epic scale, dynamic story with the two of them caught in the middle of it, trying to figure out a way of trusting each other enough so they can work together. And all the while, there is this terrible, terrible threat that eventually one or other of them is going to do something that's going to cause them to come to blows and and have the rematch that will be the decider to their original confrontation.
Gotcha.
So you've got both of these characters. They are both absolutely in character. I've tried my best to make Vampirella as possible and Sonja as Sonja as possible, but they're also in this deliciously different context of the superhero environment. And that means they have a marvelous supporting cast of really cool characters. I've tried to really bring out the best of some of these great classic heroes, some of whom, get on well. Some of them think these two people should be ejected immediately from the club and never asked to return, all that sort of stuff. So there is a great group dynamic going on here, which is entirely befitting to the sort of crisis level or Secret Wars level thing that is happening on this stricken world. It's Vampirella, it's Red Sonja, it's all of the things you would expect to get from them, plus it's major superhero event context, which I think gives it a flavor that we've not seen in stories from either of these characters before.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you, is this sort of the culmination of the two series from last year, or is this just the next chapter and there's more that you're thinking about?
Well, it is the culmination. This is the climactic, as it were, third movie in the trilogy. I'll say you can treat it as standalone, but it is like these two things were leading to this incredibly big event. However, having sort of, as it were, built this world and worked out all the cool things that can happen in it, I'm thinking, well, there are also going to be more stories to tell one way or another with whoever walks out and survives when the dust settles.
Yeah.
There are lots of characters. There are loads of other things to tell. So hopefully there will be a chance to do some other things with this world featuring either one or both of these characters or indeed some of the other characters that have supported them so far. There's big potential there.
Fantastic. Yeah. And you're working with your sometimes collaborator on Immortal Red Sonja, right? Alessandro Ranaldi.
Yes, he's terrific. Our particular work together was on the climactic series of Dejah Thoris and John Carter, which he was absolutely marvelous with. He did the first issue of Immortal as well. He's brilliant and brings a sort of glamorous dynamic to these things. I mean, I think he sort of essentially he's been great at everything we've worked together on so far, but he's particularly good at I think sort of grand scale classic superhero stuff. But he's also got enough of a grasp of the way things like Dejah Thoris and Red Sonja works to do those sort of non-superhero but heroic fantasy characters as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he produces. But I think it's going to be impressive stuff.
I have no doubt. Well, it sounds fantastic. We can't wait to see it. It's coming up in November. So if you're watching this, please stop by your local comic shop. Tell the person behind the counter you really want to get in on this at the beginning and get all the issues and everything. There's a bunch of covers for issue number 1 that we're going to show right now. And, you can take your pick or ask for them all or whatever you want because they are very cool. Dan, it's been a pleasure hearing about this project from you. It sounds very exciting, and we look forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.